They seated me at table 12 behind a flower arrangement that could hide a small aircraft like I was some embarrassing relative they hoped would vanish into the centerpiece. I smiled sweetly and decided this charming boy had no idea what storm he was about to walk into. 3 days later he'd show up at my door with papers that would make me laugh for weeks. If you're reading this, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. What Marcus Thornfield didn't know was that this helpless widow had been keeping some very expensive secrets. The morning had started with such optimism. I'd chosen my outfit with the precision of a chessmaster modest gray dress that whispered harmless widow paired with my grandmother's pearls for just enough dignity to avoid looking pitiful. My hair was done at Martha's salon. Nothing too fancy, just respectable enough for my daughter's wedding. "Mom, you look acceptable," Emma said when I arrived, already distracted by whatever crisis the wedding coordinator was having. Acceptable like a participation trophy in human form. I watched my daughter glide around in great-grandmother's lace, the one beautiful thing our family had managed to keep through the years. She looked radiant, absolutely glowing with that new bride energy that makes everyone temporarily forget their own problems. But as the guests filtered in, the social hierarchy became crystal clear. Marcus' parents swept in like visiting royalty. His mother, Patricia, dripping in enough diamonds to blind passing aircraft. She worked the room with surgical precision, air-kissing the important people while somehow managing to look straight through me like I was furniture. "Excuse me," I told the frazzled usher, showing my table assignment. "I believe there's been a delightful mistake here. Table 12, ma'am." Right behind the decorative feature, how diplomatically they put it, I was being hidden behind enough flowers to supply a funeral home. I navigated to my designated exile, which offered a spectacular view of absolutely nothing except hibiscus and baby's breath. From my horticultural prison, I could watch the festivities unfold in the large mirror across the room. There I was, Sylvia Hartley. 72 years of accumulated wisdom, tucked away like last week's newspaper. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll grant them that. Emma floated down the aisle like something from a fairy tale, and Marcus cleaned up nicely in his expensive suit. But during cocktail hour, I noticed something fascinating about my new son-in-law. He had different smiles. Megawatt charm for the obviously wealthy guests, practiced politeness for the useful ones, and complete indifference for anyone who looked like they might ask favors instead of offering opportunities. "Mrs. Hartley." I turned to find Marcus himself approaching, armed with his most dazzling smile, the one reserved for people he was about to manipulate. "Isn't this just magical?" he said, gesturing at the reception like he'd personally arranged the sunset. "You must be absolutely bursting with pride." "Oh, I'm practically vibrating with maternal joy," I replied, my voice sweeter than artificial sweetener. "Though I must say, the view from here is quite educational." He either missed the acid in my tone or chose to ignore it like a seasoned politician. I was hoping we could spend some quality time together soon. Really get to know each other properly. How refreshing. Most people usually manage that before marrying into the family, but I do admire your commitment to handling things in reverse chronological order. That earned me a microscopic pause in his smile. Barely a flicker, but I caught it like a hawk spotting prey. "I was thinking dinner this week, just the two of us. I have some fascinating ideas about family collaboration." Family collaboration. How deliciously ominous. Well, I do love a good mystery dinner. Thursday work for your busy schedule? Perfect. I know this place downtown. Very private. Excellent for meaningful conversations. Meaningful conversations about what? I wondered. My thrilling stamp collection, my weekly bridge club scandals. "I can hardly contain my excitement," I said, fanning myself with my napkin like a southern belle having the vapors. As he glided away to charm more promising prospects, I caught my reflection in that mirror again. A silver-haired woman in understated clothes sitting alone behind enough flowers to stock a botanical garden. Someone who looked like she probably shopped with coupons and worried about heating bills. Exactly the image I'd been cultivating for 2 years. During the father-daughter dance, I slipped away to powder my nose in the marble ladies' room. In that fancy sanctuary, I touched up my lipstick and practiced my harmless elderly widow expression in the mirror. When I returned to my floral fortress, Marcus was charming the elderly couple next to me, the Hendersons from Robert's old firm. They were eating up his attention like it was wedding cake. "Mrs. Hartley," he said, catching my eye as I sat down. "Really looking forward to Thursday." "So am I, dear." "Am I?" As Emma tossed her bouquet, and the evening wound down, I watched my new son-in-law work the room with the efficiency of a seasoned con artist. He clearly had elaborate plans brewing in that handsome head. Too bad for Marcus. I'd spent 72 years learning that the most dangerous opponents are usually the ones everyone underestimates. And this old widow was about to become very, very dangerous. The post-wedding aftermath lasted exactly 48 hours before the real show began. Emma called daily. Each conversation a breathless symphony of marital bliss and how wonderfully Marcus was treating her. "He's so thoughtful, Mom. Always thinking ahead about our future and financial security." Security. The word floated through our conversations like smoke before a fire. How lovely. "Sweetheart, a husband should definitely think about money constantly, especially other people's money." "What do you mean?" "Nothing, dear. Just that financial planning is so romantic." Emma missed the sarcasm entirely, which was probably for the best. Wednesday crawled by like a dental procedure you couldn't reschedule. I spent the day doing thrilling widow activities, dusting Robert's books, deadheading roses, and wondering what my charming new son-in-law wanted to discuss over what would undoubtedly be overpriced wine. Thursday evening arrived with all the enthusiasm of a tax audit. I dressed for my role as modest widow. Simple black dress that suggested respectability without prosperity, paired with my mother's pearl earrings and Robert's broken watch that still looked dignified from a distance. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was one of those places where they pronounce water with a French accent, and the waiters look at you like you're personally responsible for their artistic disappointment. He was already seated when I arrived, looking every inch the successful young executive. "Sylvia." He practically levitated from his chair. "You look absolutely radiant." "Thank you, dear. This place certainly is something." And it was something all right. The kind of something that made you wonder if they charged extra for the privilege of feeling inadequate. We ordered wine. He insisted on a bottle that probably had more syllables than my high school diploma, and settled into what he clearly thought would be an easy conversation. So he began swirling his wine like a sommelier with delusions of grandeur. "How are you managing life on your own?" "Oh, just brilliantly. 72 years of practice makes most things seem trivial." Of course. But surely it gets overwhelming sometimes. That big house, all those decisions." He was fishing with the subtlety of dynamite in a trout pond. "Robert always said I had enough opinions for 3 people. So I keep myself thoroughly entertained." He laughed. That practiced boardroom laugh that probably worked wonders on investors and gullible elderly relatives. "That's wonderful. But seriously, don't you worry about practical matters, finances, legal issues, people who might take advantage of your generous spirit." There it was. The real topic dressed up in concern and served with expensive wine. "Should I be worried about something specific, Marcus?" "Not worried exactly, but prepared. You know how complicated things can become, especially for someone in your unique situation." My unique situation. Like being a widow was a rare medical condition. And what situation would that be exactly? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to that confidential tone men use when they're about to explain something to the little woman. "Well, living alone, making major decisions without guidance, being vulnerable to people who might not have your best interests at heart, vulnerable to people like him, presumably. How thoughtful of you to be concerned about my vulnerability. I've actually been consulting with my attorney about protective measures for people in situations like yours." Protective measures. How delightfully patronizing. What kind of protection are we discussing? He reached into his jacket with the flourish of a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. Out came a manila folder which he placed on the table like it was the Holy Grail. "Just some basic paperwork. Nothing dramatic. Simply safeguards in case you ever need assistance making important decisions." I opened the folder with the enthusiasm of someone handling a live snake. Power of attorney, power of financial oversight, medical decision-making authority. Complete control disguised as loving concern. This is quite comprehensive. My lawyer specializes in elder care. He's handled many cases like yours, cases like mine. I was apparently a case study now. How fascinating. And Emma is aware of this thoughtful initiative. She thinks it's brilliant. Really, Sylvia, we just want to ensure you're protected from anyone who might take advantage of your trusting nature. My trusting nature. The boy really had done his homework. Protected from whom specifically? Oh, dishonest contractors, questionable investment advisors, relatives who might suddenly become very interested in your welfare. Relatives who might suddenly become interested. The irony was so thick you could serve it for dessert. How prescient of you to anticipate such problems. Just common sense. These things are much easier to arrange before any complications develop. Complications like me maintaining control of my own life. You see. And this needs to be handled quickly because timing matters with these arrangements. The longer you wait, the more questions might arise about your capacity to make such decisions. My capacity. He was already laying groundwork for declaring me incompetent. Well, I said, closing the folder and placing my hands on top of it like I was blessing it. This certainly requires careful consideration. Relief flooded his face like he just landed a major client. Of course, take all the time you need, though my attorney did emphasize that prompt action would be advisable prompt action. Before I had time to think or consult anyone with functioning brain cells. I'll definitely want to review this with my own legal counsel. His smile flickered like a candle in wind. Your own lawyer. Oh yes, I know it seems silly, but I'd feel more comfortable having someone explain it in terms my simple mind can grasp. Sylvia, I really think we should finalize this tonight. These matters work best when handled efficiently. Efficiently before I had time to realize I was being robbed. I'm sure your notary will understand that important decisions shouldn't be rushed. My what? Your notary. You did bring one, didn't you? You seem so prepared for everything else. The mask slipped completely. How did you know about the notary? Lucky guess. You strike me as someone who plans ahead. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to determine if I was genuinely naive or actively resisting his con. Of course, he said finally. Take all the time you need. But his eyes said something entirely different. His eyes said he was done playing games with the harmless old widow. Too bad for Marcus. The harmless old widow was just getting started playing games with him. The weekend passed with deceptive calm, but I could feel Marcus' impatience crackling through the phone lines like static electricity. Emma called twice, both times casually inquiring about that helpful paperwork Marcus showed you. Still mulling it over, sweetheart. He's just trying to help. Mom, he knows so much about legal things. Legal things like theft was just another item on a professional development checklist. Monday morning brought a call that confirmed my suspicions about my charming son-in-law's true nature. Sylvia, it's Marcus. I hope you've had time to think about our discussion. Oh, I've been thinking about very little else. Wonderful. I was hoping we could meet again this week. I have some additional information that might help clarify things. Additional information. More sophisticated lies, presumably. How thoughtful. Same restaurant. Actually, I was thinking somewhere more private. Maybe your home. I could bring some documents that would be easier to review in a comfortable setting. My home, where he could pressure me without witnesses. What kind of documents? Just some examples of how these arrangements have helped other families. Success stories, you might say. Success stories about elderly people who'd surrendered their independence to charming predators. That sounds fascinating. Wednesday evening. Perfect. Around 7. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. I spent the intervening days doing what I did best, observing and planning. If Marcus wanted to play games in my house, I'd make sure the game was rigged in my favor. Wednesday evening I prepared for battle. Simple gray dress, minimal jewelry. The perfect costume for a woman about to spring a very expensive trap. Marcus arrived precisely at 7, armed with his briefcase and his most trustworthy smile. "Sylvia, thank you so much for agreeing to meet here. I know this whole situation can feel overwhelming." "Oh, I'm not overwhelmed at all. I'm actually finding it quite educational." He settled into my living room like he belonged there, spreading documents across my coffee table with practiced efficiency. "I brought some case studies of families who've benefited from these arrangements. I think you'll find them reassuring." "How thoughtful. But before we discuss other people's stories, I have some questions about your story." "My story?" "I'm curious about your background, your qualifications for managing other people's lives." His confident expression flickered slightly. "Well, I have extensive business experience." "In what field?" "Investment management." "Primarily, for which firm?" "I work independently now." "And before that, various positions in financial services." "Various positions. How delightfully vague. How long have you been advising elderly people about their financial decisions?" "I wouldn't call it advising." "Exactly. More like protective planning." "And how many elderly people have you protected?" "Few." "Families who needed guidance?" "Guidance they requested or guidance you suggested they needed?" The room fell silent except for the ticking of my grandmother's clock. "Sylvia, I think there might be some misunderstanding about my intentions." "Oh, I understand your intentions perfectly, and what I'm curious about is your methods." "My methods for identifying vulnerable targets, for gaining their trust, for convincing them to sign away their rights." "I would never what, Marcus?" "Never target elderly widows. Never manipulate them with false concern. Never steal their independence under the guise of protection." His mask was cracking like old paint. "You're making serious accusations." "I'm making serious observations about a serious predator who made a serious mistake." "What mistake?" I smiled, channeling every ounce of steel Robert had ever seen in me, assuming I was just another helpless widow. "Sylvia, I think you're confused." "I'm not confused at all. I know exactly what you're trying to do. The question is whether you know what I'm about to do." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I've been recording this conversation. I'm talking about the private investigator who's been documenting your activities. I'm talking about the attorney who's preparing criminal charges." The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. "You can't prove anything." "Can prove everything. Your financial troubles, your debts, your pattern of targeting elderly women, all of it." "That's impossible, is it?" "Tell me, Marcus, how much do you owe in gambling debts?" He went very still. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything about you, including the fact that you're not my first admirer." "What do you mean?" "I mean you're not the first charming young man who's tried to separate me from my assets. The difference is this time I was prepared." "Prepared how?" I stood up, my voice dropping to a whisper that could cut glass. "Prepared to destroy anyone who tries to steal what my husband spent 40 years building." "You don't understand. I'm desperate. I need to leave now before I call the police." "Sylvia, please. We can work something out. The only thing we're working out is whether you leave voluntarily or in handcuffs." Marcus gathered his papers with shaking hands, his carefully constructed plan crumbling around him like a house of cards in a hurricane. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said, thinking of Robert's secrets waiting in the basement. "It is." After he left, I poured myself a glass of Robert's best wine and sat in my quiet kitchen. Tomorrow I'd go down to the basement and open that old safe. Tomorrow, I'd learn exactly what weapons my husband had left me. Tonight, I'd savor the look of panic in Marcus Thornfield's eyes when he realized he'd chosen the wrong widow to mess with. Some predators learn too late that sometimes the prey has bigger teeth than the hunter. Thursday morning, I stood at the top of my basement stairs, holding Robert's key, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. For 2 years, I'd avoided this moment, too grief-stricken to face whatever secrets my husband had left behind. Marcus Thornfield had just given me an excellent reason to overcome my reluctance. The basement smelled like old paper and Robert's cologne, the scent still clinging to his clothes hanging in the corner. His desk sat exactly as he'd left it. Crossword puzzles, coffee-stained coasters, the reading glasses he'd worn for 40 years. The safe was hidden behind a panel I'd never noticed, camouflaged to look like part of the concrete wall. Robert had always been cleverer than he let on. Inside I found documents that made my hands shake. Bank statements showing accounts I'd never heard of, investment records spanning decades, legal papers establishing trusts and protections I didn't know existed. And at the very bottom, a letter in Robert's familiar handwriting that changed everything. My dearest Sylvia, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and someone is trying to take advantage of your generous heart. I'm sorry I never told you about the money. $33 million, properly protected and completely yours. I lived modestly so we could die wealthy, and I hid our wealth so you'd be safe from predators. Exactly like whoever drove you to open this safe. $33 million. I sat down heavily on Robert's old chair, the numbers swimming in front of my eyes. $33 million. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. The letter continued. There's a business card in this envelope for Carol Peterson. She's handled everything since I got sick. She knows about the threats you might face, and she has instructions to help you fight back. Don't let anyone steal what I spent 40 years building for you. Use every penny if you have to. Make them regret the day they decided to mess with my wife. I found Carol's card and called immediately. Peterson Law Office. This is Sylvia Hartley. I believe my husband, Robert, arranged for you to assist me. Mrs. Hartley, I've been waiting 2 years for your call. Can you come in today? How soon? How about right now? Carol Peterson's office was nothing like the stuffy legal chambers I'd expected. Modern, bright, with family photos scattered among law degrees. She was younger than I'd imagined, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and a handshake that could crack walnuts. Sylvia, please sit. Robert told me this day might come. What day? The day someone tried to manipulate you into signing away your rights. She spread documents across her desk. Trust papers, investment records, legal protections. I'd never dreamed of. Your husband was remarkably prescient. He predicted someone would approach you within 2 years of his death, probably through family connections, trying to gain control of what they assumed were modest assets. But they're not modest. No, they're not. $33 million completely protected in an irrevocable trust. You control everything but no one else can access it. Even if they somehow gained power of attorney, even if I sign Marcus papers. Even then, Robert specifically designed this to protect you from exactly that kind of manipulation. I leaned back, feeling like I was seeing my life clearly for the first time in 2 years. So Marcus can't touch any of it. Marcus can't touch a penny. But more importantly, you now have the resources to make sure he never tries this again. What do you mean? Carol smiled with something that looked almost predatory. I mean, we're going to destroy him so thoroughly that he'll spend the rest of his life warning other predators about the dangers of underestimating widows. How? Criminal charges for attempted fraud, civil suits for damages. And we're going to investigate every financial transaction he's made for the past 5 years. Is that legal? Perfectly legal. When someone attempts to defraud you, we'll find out where his money came from, where it went, and who else he owes. We'll expose his entire operation. Operation. Oh yes. Men like Marcus don't work alone. There's a whole network of people who target elderly victims. We're going to find them all. I thought about Emma, about her tears when she talked about Marcus' debts, about how carefully he'd manipulated both of us. What happens to my daughter's marriage? That's up to Emma. But she'll make that decision with complete information instead of lies and manipulation. And the money remains secret until you decide otherwise. The beauty of Robert's plan is that you can live exactly as you have been. Or you can buy a yacht tomorrow. Choice. I gathered up the trust documents, feeling like I was holding lightning in my hands. When do we start fighting back? We already started. The moment you walked into my office, Marcus Thornfield became a target instead of a hunter. As I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about Robert's letter. He'd known this would happen. He'd prepared for it. He'd armed me for a war I didn't even know was coming. But more than that, He'd given me permission to win. That evening Emma called. "Mom, Marcus seems really upset about something. He won't tell me what happened at your meeting." We had a fascinating conversation about his plans for my future. What kind of plans? The kind that assume I'm too stupid to protect myself. "Mom, he's just trying to help." "Sweetheart, there are things about your husband you don't know. Things about our family, finances you don't know. Tomorrow I think it's time you learn the truth." "What truth?" "The truth about what your father really left me and the truth about what I'm going to do to anyone who tries to steal it." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Mom, you're scaring me." It's about time someone in this family was properly scared." After Emma hung up, I sat in my kitchen holding Robert's letter, thinking about $33 million and the war it was about to buy me. Marcus Thornfield thought he was hunting a helpless widow. He was about to discover he'd walked into the lair of a very wealthy, very angry dragon. And dragons don't negotiate with thieves. They incinerate them. Friday morning arrived with Carol Peterson's call and the sweet promise of professional revenge. I found a lawyer who specializes in prosecuting elder fraud. "She wants to meet with you today." "How soon?" "This afternoon. She's very interested in Marcus' case." "Why?" "Because she thinks he's part of a larger operation. If we can prove that, we can bring down the entire network." The afternoon meeting took place in the district attorney's office where I met Sarah Chen, a sharp-eyed prosecutor who looked like she ate insurance fraud for breakfast. "Mrs. Hartley, tell me about your son-in-law's approach." I walked her through every conversation, every manipulation, every carefully crafted lie Marcus had fed me and Emma. "Classic pattern," she said, making notes. "Family connection, financial pressure, urgency to sign documents. He's done this before." "How can you tell?" "'Cause amateurs make mistakes." Marcus knew exactly which emotional buttons to push, which legal phrases to use, how to structure the timeline. This is his profession. "So what do? We set a trap. Make him think he's won. Then document everything he does next." Carol leaned forward. "What kind of trap?" "Mrs. Hartley calls him, says she's reconsidered, wants to move forward with signing the papers. We record everything. His response, his instructions, his timeline. And then we arrest him the moment he brings a notary to witness the signing." I smiled, thinking of Marcus' desperation, his gambling debts, his absolute certainty that he'd manipulated a helpless widow. "When do we spring this trap?" "Monday. That gives us the weekend to set up recording equipment and coordinate with the police." Saturday, I spent the day preparing for the performance of my life, practicing my grateful widow voice, rehearsing my lines about feeling safer with Marcus' protection. Sunday brought Emma, looking worried and confused. "Mom, Marcus has been acting strange. He keeps asking about Dad's finances, about whether you might have hidden accounts or investments." "What did you tell him?" "That I don't know anything about your money." "But Mom, why is he so interested?" I looked at my daughter, beautiful, trusting, completely unaware that her husband was a predator hunting her mother because he needs money more desperately than you realize. "How desperately?" "Desperately enough to steal it from his wife's mother." Emma stared at me. "You really think he's trying to steal from you?" "I know he is. The question is whether you're ready to see proof." "What kind of proof?" "The kind that will destroy your marriage but save your mother." Emma was quiet for a long time. "Finally, show me." Monday morning I called Marcus with the performance of my lifetime. "Marcus, it's Sylvia. I've been thinking about our conversation." His voice was carefully controlled, but I could hear the excitement underneath. "Think you're right. I do need protection. I'd like to move forward with those papers." The relief in his voice was audible. "That's wonderful, Sylvia. When would be convenient?" "As soon as possible. This weekend made me realize how vulnerable I really am." "Perfect. I can have everything ready by this afternoon." This afternoon, I let a note of elderly confusion creep into my voice. "Isn't that rather fast?" "These things work best when handled efficiently." "I'll bring my notary. We'll get everything signed and you'll be completely protected." "Protected from him?" "Well, if you think it's best, I do." Let's say 3 o'clock at your house. 3 o'clock sounds perfect. After I hung up, Carol nodded approvingly from her position monitoring the recording equipment. He took the bait completely. Now what? Now we wait for him to hang himself with his own rope. At exactly 3 o'clock, Marcus arrived with his briefcase, his notary, and his most trustworthy smile. Hidden cameras captured everything as he spread documents across my coffee table. Sylvia, I can't tell you how relieved I am that you're taking this step. I realized you were right about the dangers. An old woman like me needs guidance. Exactly. Now, these papers will give Emma and me the authority to protect your interests. All of my interests. All of them. Financial decisions, medical choices, living arrangements, everything. Living arrangements. He was already planning to warehouse me somewhere convenient. And this needs to be notarized today because delays create complications. The sooner we get this in place, the sooner you're protected. I picked up the pen, letting my hand shake slightly. This is quite overwhelming. I know it seems complicated, but trust me, this is the best thing for everyone. Trust him. The man who was stealing my life while promising to protect it. I signed the first page, then paused. Marcus, can I ask you something? Course. What happens to my money after I sign this? Your money will be professionally managed. No more worrying about investments or bills or financial decisions. By whom? By people with experience, people who understand these things. People like you. People like Emma and me. Yes, I sign the second page. And if I change my mind later, well, that would depend on your mental state at the time. These arrangements are designed to be permanent. Permanent like a life sentence. You see. I signed the third page. Marcus, there's something I should mention. What's that? I think there might be more money than you realize. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. More money. Robert may have had some accounts I didn't know about. Hidden investments, perhaps. How much more money, Sylvia? And there it was. The greed, the desperation, the absolute confirmation that this was never about protecting me. I'm not sure. Maybe significant amounts. Marcus' hands were actually shaking now. Significant how? Well, I said, setting down the pen without signing the final page. That's where things get interesting. What do you mean? I smiled, thinking of $33 million and the trap we just sprung. I mean, you're under arrest, Marcus. You have the right to remain silent. The police emerged from their hiding places as Marcus' face went white with shock and terror. You can't. I did. And now you're going to learn what happens to predators who hunt the wrong prey. As they led him away in handcuffs, I heard him screaming about entrapment and legal challenges. But all I heard was the sound of justice being served with a $33 million side of revenge. The news broke that evening. Local businessman arrested in elder fraud sting operation. Marcus' perp walk played on every channel. His face a mask of disbelief and rage. Emma called sobbing. Mom, what have you done? I've protected myself from your husband's attempt to steal my independence and my assets. But the arrest, the charges, this will destroy him. But that was the point. How can you be so cold? How can you defend a man who was systematically planning to rob your mother? Emma showed up an hour later, her eyes red from crying. I sat her down and played the recording of Marcus's confession. Every greedy word, every calculated manipulation, every moment he'd revealed his true nature. He was going to put me in a nursing home, sweetheart. He was going to steal everything your father left me and convince everyone I was too senile to object. But he loves me. He loves what he thought you could get him. There's a difference. I showed her the financial records Carol had uncovered. The gambling debts, the fake business ventures, the systematic targeting of elderly widows. This isn't his first time, Emma. You're married to a professional predator. She stared at the evidence, her face cycling through denial, anger, and heartbreak. What am I supposed to do now? Whatever you want, but you'll do it with complete information, not with lies and manipulation. Tuesday brought Marcus's father, pompous and furious. Sylvia, you've destroyed my son's life over a misunderstanding. I've exposed your son's criminal behavior. There's a difference. He was trying to help you. He was trying to rob me. The recordings don't lie. This is vindictive, cruel. This is justice. Your son chose to prey on elderly women. Now he gets to experience the consequences. Wednesday brought Marcus's bail hearing where he tried to paint himself as a concerned family member who'd been entrapped by a paranoid widow. The judge wasn't impressed. Mr. Thornfield, the evidence suggests a systematic attempt to defraud an elderly family member. Bail is set at $500,000, $500,000. Money Marcus didn't have. He'd be staying in jail until trial. Thursday brought a visit from Carol with updates that made my morning coffee taste even better. The FBI is interested in Marcus' case. They think he's connected to a multi-state elder fraud ring. How big? Potentially dozens of victims, millions in stolen assets. If they can flip Marcus, they might bring down the entire operation. Will he cooperate? Depends how much prison time he's facing. 20 years tends to make people very talkative. 20 years. Marcus would be middle-aged when he got out, assuming he survived that long in prison. Friday brought Emma's decision. She filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and emotional fraud. I can't stay married to someone who tried to rob my mother, she told the lawyer. What about the house, the cars, the lifestyle he provided? All bought with borrowed money and false promises. I want nothing that came from his schemes. Emma moved back to town, finding an apartment near mine. The experience had changed her, made her stronger, more suspicious, more aware of how people could be manipulated. I feel so stupid, she said one evening as we sat on my porch. You trusted someone you loved. That's not stupid. It's human. But all the signs were there. The expensive lifestyle, the vague answers about money, the sudden interest in you after we got engaged. He was very good at what he did. Professional manipulators are trained to exploit trust. How did you know? I didn't at first, but your father left me. Resources. Tools to fight back when someone tried to steal what he'd built. What kind of resources? I looked at my daughter, wondering if she was ready for the truth about Robert's legacy. The kind that turn helpless widows into very dangerous enemies. Mom, exactly how much money did Dad leave you? Enough to destroy anyone who tries to steal it. The trial began in September. Marcus' lawyer tried every defense. Diminished capacity, entrapment, family misunderstanding. Nothing worked. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings were damning. The pattern of targeting elderly victims was undeniable. When they played the audio of Marcus discussing my mental state and his plans for permanent control of my assets, even his own lawyer looked disgusted. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge looked down at Marcus with contempt. Mr. Thornfield, you systematically targeted vulnerable elderly people, destroyed their independence, and stole their life savings. You preyed on trust, exploited family relationships, and showed no remorse for the lives you destroyed. The court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison. 18 years. Marcus would be 55 when he got out, assuming anyone would hire an ex-convict with an elder fraud conviction. As they led him away, he looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, old woman. I smiled sweetly. Yes, it is. After the trial, Carol and I celebrated at the same restaurant where Marcus had first tried to manipulate me. You realize you've become something of a legend in elder law circles, she said, raising her wine glass. How so? You're the widow who fought back and won. You've inspired other victims to come forward, other families to question suspicious relatives. But no one should suffer what Marcus planned for me. What's next for you? I thought about Emma rebuilding her life with hard-won wisdom. I thought about the other victims Marcus had destroyed over the years. I thought about Robert's trust and the power it gave me to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Next, I make sure this never happens to anyone else. How? By using every resource at my disposal to hunt down predators before they find their next victim. Carol smiled. That sounds expensive. Can afford it. That night, I sat in my kitchen reading Robert's letter one final time. He'd known this day would come. He'd prepared me for it. He'd given me the weapons to win a war I didn't even know was being fought. But more than that, he'd given me permission to be dangerous. Marcus Thornfield had learned too late that some widows bite back, and some bites are fatal. The aftermath of Marcus' conviction brought unexpected visitors to my door. Emma's mother-in-law Patricia arrived Tuesday morning, dripping with desperation, disguised as dignity. "Sylvia, we need to discuss this unfortunate situation." "Come in, Patricia. I was wondering when you'd show up." She swept into my living room like she still owned the world, but I could see the cracks in her facade. The jewelry was still there, but it looked somehow cheaper. The designer clothes were perfectly pressed, but slightly dated. "This vendetta against Marcus has gone too far." "Vendetta? Is that what we're calling prosecuting criminals now?" "He made a mistake. People don't deserve to have their lives destroyed over one error in judgment." "One error?" "Patricia, your son systematically targeted elderly women for years. This wasn't a mistake. It was his business model." She shifted uncomfortably, her mask of superiority slipping. "The family is suffering because of your actions. The family is suffering because of Marcus' crimes. We're losing everything. The house, the business, our reputation, and there it was. Not concern for Marcus, not remorse for his victims, but worry about their own social standing. How tragic. I'm sure the elderly women Marcus robbed would be devastated to hear about your inconvenience. You don't understand. We have obligations, commitments. You had obligations to raise a son who didn't prey on vulnerable people. How did that work out?" Patricia's composure cracked completely. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing. I already got what I wanted. Justice. There must be something. Money. Public apology. Surely we can work something out." I studied her face, seeing the desperation she was trying so hard to hide. "Actually, there is something you can do." Hope flickered in her eyes. "What?" "Disappear. Move away. Change your name. Make sure no member of your family ever targets another elderly person." That's unreasonable. Prison is unreasonable. Poverty is unreasonable. Losing your independence to a predator is unreasonable. My request is perfectly reasonable." Patricia left without another word, her dignity in tatters. Wednesday brought Marcus' former business partner, a sleazy man named Richard, who'd apparently been coordinating the elder fraud network. "Mrs. Hartley, I think we can help each other." "I doubt that very much. I have information about other victims, names, amounts stolen, methods used. Information that could help you recover losses in exchange for what? Leniency for Marcus. Maybe a reduced sentence, early parole." I laughed, actually laughed at his audacity. "Richard, let me explain something. I don't negotiate with criminals. I destroy them. You're making a mistake. We could be valuable allies. You could be valuable inmates, which coincidentally is exactly what you're about to become." I called Carol immediately after he left. By Friday, Richard was under federal investigation for his role in the fraud network. The following week brought a parade of Marcus associates, each trying to bargain their way out of prosecution. Real estate agents who'd helped launder stolen money, lawyers who'd prepared fraudulent documents, bank employees who'd helped move assets. One by one, I sent them all to Carol and the FBI. "You're building quite the reputation," Carol observed during one of our weekly meetings. "Word is getting out that targeting you was Marcus' fatal mistake." "Good. Fear is an excellent deterrent. The federal prosecutor says your case is going to revolutionize how they handle elder fraud networks." "How so?" "Usually they catch one or two people and call it a victory. Your case is giving them access to an entire criminal organization. And the other victims, 37 confirmed so far, with more coming forward every week. Total damages over $12 million. $12 million stolen from elderly people who trusted the wrong person. Can we get their money back?" "Most of it. The federal asset forfeit laws are very favorable when criminal enterprises are involved." "What about Marcus specifically?" "His personal assets are being liquidated. The house, cars, jewelry, everything. It'll be distributed among his victims, including me." You weren't actually victimized financially since you never signed the papers. Then my share goes to the other victims. Sylvia, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Can spare it. That evening, Emma came over for dinner looking healthier than she had in months. The divorce is final, she announced. How do you feel? Free. Terrified. But free. Terrified of what? Of making the same mistake again, of trusting the wrong person. Emma, what Marcus did to you wasn't your fault, but I brought him into our family. I gave him access to you, and when you learned the truth, you chose justice over comfort. That takes courage. Did it ever occur to you that you might be in danger? That Marcus's associates might try to retaliate? I smiled, thinking of the security measures Carol had helped me implement, the connections with law enforcement, the very public nature of my victory. Let them try. I'm not the helpless widow they think I am. No, you're definitely not that. As Emma left that night, I reflected on how much had changed since Marcus first approached me with his fraudulent concern. 6 months ago, I'd been hiding my resources, playing the role of modest widow, keeping my head down. Now I was someone whose phone calls got returned immediately, whose concerns were taken seriously, whose enemies ended up in federal prison. But more importantly, I'd become someone who mattered to people who needed protection. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Carol's voice was excited. Sylvia, we just got a break in the federal case. Marcus is cooperating. What's he telling them? Everything. Names, methods, locations, bank accounts. The entire elder fraud network is about to collapse. And in exchange, reduced sentence. He'll still do significant time, but not the full 18 years. I thought about Marcus in his prison cell, finally understanding that actions have consequences, that predators sometimes become prey. How much time? Probably 8 to 10 years with good behavior. Years. Marcus would be 43 when he got out with a federal conviction that would follow him forever. That's acceptable. There's something else. The federal prosecutor wants to interview you about creating a victim advocacy program. What kind of program? Training for law enforcement, resources for victims, legal support for prosecutions. They want to use your case as a model. I smiled, thinking of Robert's legacy, and how he'd equipped me not just to protect myself, but to protect others. Set up the meeting. As I hung up, I realized that Marcus Thornfield had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible, a purpose that matched my resources. He'd tried to steal my independence and ended up giving me a mission. Some mistakes are more expensive than others. His had cost him everything and given me exactly what I needed to become dangerous to people like him. Justice, I decided, had an excellent sense of irony. The federal prosecutor's office felt different from local law enforcement. More serious, more professional, more expensive. Agent Sarah Torres greeted me with the kind of respect usually reserved for major political donors. Mrs. Hartley, your case has become our gold standard for elder fraud prosecution. How so? Most victims are too embarrassed or confused to fight back effectively. You not only fought back, you destroyed an entire criminal network. I had good resources and you used them strategically. That's what we want to discuss. Agent Torres spread files across the conference table. Photos, financial records, organizational charts showing the scope of Marcus' operation. 39 victims across 6 states. Average loss of $300,000 per victim. Total damages approaching $15 million. $15 million stolen from elderly people who trusted the wrong, charming young men. What happened to the other victims? Most lost their independence, their savings, their confidence in their own judgment. Several were placed in nursing homes against their will. 3 died while their assets were being systematically stolen. 3 people died while being robbed. The number hit me like a physical blow. What can we do for them? For the dead, nothing. For the survivors, everything if you're willing to help. What kind of help? Agent Torres pulled out a thick folder labeled Victim Advocacy Initiative. We want to create a program that does for other victims what you did for yourself. Legal resources, financial protection, criminal prosecution support funded how? Combination of federal grants, asset forfeit funds, and private donations. private donations. She was asking me to bankroll justice for elderly fraud victims. How much would this cost? Initial startup around $2 million. Ongoing operations maybe $5 million annually. $5 million a year. A significant chunk of Robert's trust, but not enough to impact my security. And in exchange, we systematically destroy every elder fraud operation in the country. I thought about the 3 victims who died while being robbed, about the others who'd lost everything to predators like Marcus. Where do I sign? Paperwork took 3 hours. When we finished, I was the primary funding source for the most comprehensive elder fraud prosecution program in federal history. Mrs. Hartley, you realize you've just declared war on a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. But wars keep life interesting. That evening, Emma and I celebrated the new program over dinner at the restaurant where Marcus had first tried to manipulate me. Mom, are you sure about spending this much money on strangers? They're not strangers. They're people who got targeted by predators like your ex-husband. But $5 million a year is less than I earn in investment income. Your father built this wealth to protect people. I'm finally using it the way he intended. And if the program doesn't work, then we'll build a better one. Money is only useful if you use it for something that matters. Emma raised her wine glass. To making predators pay, to making them extinct. The program launched 3 months later with spectacular results. Within the first week, we'd opened investigations in 12 states. Within the first month, we'd arrested 17 people connected to elder fraud networks. But the most satisfying call came on a Tuesday morning from Agent Torres. Mrs. Hartley, we just arrested Marcus' former mentor. His mentor, the man who taught him how to target elderly women, been running these schemes for 20 years. Your program gave us the resources to build a case against him. What's his name? William Thornfield. Marcus's uncle. Marcus's uncle. The family business was literally stealing from elderly people. How many victims? Over 100. Dating back to the 1990s. He's been systematically destroying lives for decades. And now he's facing life in prison without parole. The federal charges alone will keep him locked up until he dies. Life in prison for stealing from elderly people. Finally, consequences that match the crime. There's something else. Agent Torres continued. He wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. Names, methods, locations of other networks across the country. And you're considering this. We're considering it because his information could help us shut down elder fraud operations in 30 states. I thought about justice versus revenge, about protecting future victims versus punishing past crimes. Take the deal, but make sure he serves significant time. At least 15 years, even with cooperation 15 years. William Thornfield would be 80 when he got out, assuming he lived that long in prison. Acceptable. The information William provided was devastating to elder fraud networks nationwide. Within 6 months, our program had facilitated arrests in 23 states. The criminal organizations that had preyed on elderly victims for decades were collapsing like houses of cards. You've become the most feared individual in elder fraud circles, Carol told me during one of our meetings. They're actually warning each other about targeting widows because they might end up with another Sylvia Hartley situation. What's a Sylvia Hartley situation? Complete destruction of their criminal enterprise, federal prosecution, and asset forfeit that leaves them bankrupt. Perfect. Fear is the best deterrent. There's talk of naming the federal elder fraud statute after you. The Hartley Act. The Don't Mess with Widows Act was mentioned, but they thought that might be too informal. I laughed, thinking of Robert and how proud he'd be that his careful planning had led to protecting thousands of elderly people. Either name works for me. That evening, I sat in my garden reading the latest program reports. In 1 year, we'd recovered over $40 million for fraud victims. We'd sent dozens of predators to prison. We'd created a network of protection that extended across the entire country. But more importantly, we'd sent a message that elderly people were no longer easy targets. The phone rang, interrupting my reflection. Emma's voice was excited. Mom, turn on the news. Channel 7. I found the remote and switched to the local news where a reporter was standing outside the federal courthouse. In a stunning development, authorities have arrested the entire leadership of what they're calling the largest elder fraud network in U.S. history. The investigation, funded by a private donor who wishes to remain anonymous, has resulted in charges against 43 individuals across 15 states, 43 arrests, 15 states. The network that had destroyed so many lives was finally being destroyed itself. Mom, are you watching? I'm watching. How does it feel? I thought about Marcus in his prison cell, about William Thornfield facing life behind bars, about the hundreds of victims who would finally get justice. It feels like your father's money is being used exactly the way he intended. And how's that? To turn helpless widows into very dangerous enemies of people who prey on the vulnerable. As I hung up, I realized that Marcus Thornfield had made the most expensive mistake in elder fraud history. He'd targeted a widow who had the resources to fight back and the will to destroy anyone who threatened her. But more than that, he'd awakened something in me that I didn't know existed. The absolute determination to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Robert had left me $33 million to stay safe. I'd used it to make the world safer for everyone. Some legacies are worth more than money. This one was worth everything. 2 years after Marcus's conviction, I sat in my kitchen reading a letter that made my morning coffee taste like victory. It was from Patricia Hoffman, the elderly teacher who'd been Marcus' first victim. Dear Sylvia, I wanted you to know that I got my house back. The Federal Asset Recovery Program returned everything Marcus stole from me, plus damages. But more than that, I got my confidence back. I'm no longer afraid to make my own decisions or trust my own judgment. Thank you for showing me that we don't have to be victims. Patricia's letter was one of dozens I'd received from fraud victims whose lives had been restored by our program. Each one reminded me why Robert's trust had been used correctly, not for luxury or comfort, but for justice and protection. The doorbell interrupted my reflection.